Hello, I'm Braylon Hyde, and thank you for joining me for this very special and exclusive edition of The Hideout, brought to you by NextDefTV, the next definition in this dimension for television broadcasting. We had the pleasure of having 4 of the major candidates currently running to be the next mayor president of East Baton Rouge Parish and the city of Baton Rouge. We were honored to have our current mayor president, Sharon Weston Broome, State Representative Denise Marcel, current Metro Councilman Matt Watson, and local attorney E. Eric Gaillard as they came to put out their policies and try to tell you why they should be their next mayor president. Please check our description boxes to where we will see all of the local media outlets that you will be able to tune in to like, share, subscribe, and be able to save for posterity's sake so that you can look back 10 years from now and say, this was brought to you by NextDef, and we loved watching it on The Hideout. I hope you enjoy watching as much as I enjoyed moderating. So now we'll go ahead and join the debate already in progress. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Well, first I'd like to say thank you for joining us here at the Hilton Garden Inn in our fabulous meeting room here by the North Baton Rouge Airport. I know that you all have been hitting the trail pretty hard, and with less than a month to go, I know that right now you're kicking everything into high gear. We want to thank you for joining us for our mayoral debate today. We're going to cover a wide range of topics from COVID-19 to crime to healthcare to infrastructure and development and hospitality and tourism. But of course, as the rules were stated when we reached out to you all, you are allowed 30 seconds for opening and closing statements. We'll start with Mayor Broome with your opening statement.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to share. I've had the chance to be mayor and the privilege for the past 4 years. We have implemented transformative and transparent leadership in the past 4 years, and now I'm up for re-election, and I believe that the record that we have established will certainly catapult us into another 4 years of peace, prosperity, and progress for everyone.
Thank you. Representative Marcel.
Well, thank you for inviting me to participate. You know, I'm a state representative and I've formerly served as councilwoman in District 7. So I'm excited to be in this race. I know government, I know how to work on both sides of the aisle. I get things done. I lead by example. I heavy lift when it's necessary. And so I'm proud to be a candidate for mayor president. And I believe that I can move the city forward in terms of racial disparity, in terms of crime prevention, and certainly the flooding issues that we face. And so that's why I'm running for mayor president of East Baton Rouge Parish.
Thank you. Mr. Gaillard.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is E. Eric Gaillard, and I'm running on the Fuse the Rouge campaign. And I'm the only candidate here that has founded and run a 8-figure sizable private sector company. I'm the only political independent, and I have the most innovative ideas to help us through. Go to fusetherouge.org to get details in education, crime, traffic, business development, and what I call community relations and quality of life. So go to fusetherouge.org. Thanks.
Councilman Watson.
Yes, I'm Matt Watson, Metro Councilman for District 11, but I've never thought that my service to the community ever stopped at the geographic boundaries of my district. I've worked all across the parish because I think as a member of the legislative branch, we're 12 people serving the entire community, not just the district where we come from. I'm running for mayor because we've got 400 plus people who've been senselessly murdered since 2017 began. We've got problems with our drainage. We saw terrible flooding in 7805 in areas where no one was ever asked to get flood insurance or required to get flood insurance, and places in the southern portion of the parish that are required to have flood insurance did get flooded. And that proves to me that we have a terrible problem with drainage maintenance. And I know we've got some big plans with some large amounts of money that came from the federal government, but if we've got a hurricane brewing in the Gulf right now, we've got a whole lot of places that regular maintenance just hasn't been happening, and there's a lot of people very scared about losing their house or getting damage to their house because of flooding. So what I'm trying to do is, like I've always done, lead from the front, lead by example, never ask anyone to do anything that I wouldn't do, and get out there and lead us into the 21st century and get us set back to square one with everything clean, ready to go, and the put in regular maintenance programs so that we don't get in a situation where we're putting Band-Aids on problems rather than solving things permanently.
Thank you, Councilman Watson. Mayor Broome, clearly we know that our city and our parish has been stricken with the global pandemic of COVID-19. How would you assess your response to COVID-19 once it arrived at the doors of East Baton Rouge Parish?
I will say, with the cooperation of our medical community and our business community, that my administration certainly provided a very stellar response to COVID-19. We were the first to set up a drive-through testing site without any federal dollars, without any state dollars, but with our 5 area local hospitals. We set up the first drive-through testing site. Now we have over 40 sites throughout our city and parish. We took the initiative, I took the initiative to make sure that we closed down early on potential threats to the surge of COVID-19 with big events. And so we have certainly established a very formidable response, a very compassionate response, but one that has certainly made sure that while we look at the health and well-being of our citizens, recognize the disparities that have existed for so long, which were illuminated through COVID-19, and simultaneously work on our economy with different projects like our Keep Baton Rouge Serving and our Restart Baton Rouge, where we've helped small businesses on both projects. So I'm very proud of the response that we have put forward, and more importantly, I'm thankful to all of our first responders and our essential personnel that has helped us.
Thank you. Now, Representative Marcel, you, along with a few of your other colleagues that are also running against Mayor Broome to unseat her, have been quite critical of her leadership, not just with COVID-19, but with other issues. I believe that you were quoted saying that she's leading from a place of fear. Would you be able to provide specifics in which you feel that Mayor Broome's leadership has led from a place of fear or reactionary instead of being proactive?
Yes, I would. For example, there was a party that started on Plank Road. They initially said that it was a protest, and so people went out there as a protest. But as it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, turned into months, I kept receiving calls from residents that lived around the Plank Road area. They were doing donuts, and it was lasting up into 2 a.m. in the morning. The police presence was there, but they were not stopping it. When I sat down and reached out to the mayor's office and to law enforcement to try to see what I could do to step in front of it or what we could do together, I asked leaders to come together, the council members. I had Larry Selders on board. I had Silky Slim and some of the other people that are on the ground to come forward and say, let's meet, let's see what we can do together to be a buffer for the police department. Let's not make this about the police not really doing their jobs or make it seem like they're stopping people from protesting, because it was no longer a protest, it was a party. And everybody in this city knew it was a large party where they shut down the street and people couldn't get through. When I set up that meeting initially at the Baton Rouge City Police Office with the police officers, they called me the day of the meeting and canceled the meeting. They said that they had some other things going on, nothing more. So I moved the meeting to BRCC. Mayor Broome sent one of her representatives there, and we all agreed that we would have a press conference on that Friday to address the issue of crime on Plank Road. We said that we would all speak to the issue, that leaders should stand up in front of this issue and say that we're not having it. We weren't going to leave it on Mayor Broome to do by herself, neither Chief Paul. All of us were going to come together. You know what happened to that press conference? Mayor Broome canceled that press conference. And so, yes, she does not lead by example. And then she came back after I cleared up the party to have a peace rally where there was already peace. So that's one of the examples. I could go on, but I know I only have 30 seconds.
Mayor Broome, would you like to respond to that?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, you know, I don't like the fact that our citizens are being disparaged, talking about the peace rally that recently happened, ceasefire. That was an organic, community-led peace rally. As the mayor president, they asked me to participate in that. Secondly, We have a Baton Rouge Police Department that was well aware and that was doing their job as law enforcement as it relates to the Plank Road. Thirdly, let me just say this. You know, you cannot pretend that you're so concerned about crime and then you call the Baton Rouge Police Department to get people out of jail that commit crimes the same day, and then you get in front of the camera for a soundbite and say, oh, this shouldn't be happening. So I have been a leader that has been on the ground, that has been responsive, and that has been taking action. So contrary to this negative narrative that is being promulgated, that is not the reflection or what has taken place as it relates to crime, empowering our police department, and even now, working on our safe, hopeful, and healthy communities with our neighborhoods being engaged as violence interrupters.
Okay, now speaking on the aspects of crime, the Advocate reported that as of October 3rd, we have 83 homicides, and they're saying that we're on pace with 3 months left in the year to break the 2017 record of homicides of 106. Councilman Watson, you've been quite critical of Mayor Broome and her response to how she's been able to deal with crime here in Baton Rouge. How do we keep from breaking the 2017 record? And if you're elected mayor president, what would you do to try to combat crime here in the parish?
For starters, to talk about the party that happened on Plank Road, it didn't seem like there was much engagement in, other than people going out there speaking. I don't think there was any engagement with law enforcement until it erupted in over 100 and some odd shots fired that I saw in a video that was taken from someone as a passenger in a car fleeing that location. They were filming the party that was going on that Representative Marcel described, and then it erupts in gunfire, and then there's a response to that. The problem is, if we never got to a situation where people were gathering in high numbers, if the mayor was very concerned about social distancing and wearing masks, because this was during the COVID-19 epidemic, one would think that immediately police would be out there getting people to break up these large groups, and then we wouldn't have it escalate into the evening. Maybe alcohol is added to some of these people's systems, and it just got out of hand and erupted in violence. When we had police presence out there, yet they don't feel empowered. I speak with police officers on a daily basis. They don't feel empowered. They feel like they're handcuffed to not engage in the community and proactively police and be out there as a deterrent to crime, but just to be out there to witness what's happening in the community and only get involved when shots are fired because they're forced to do so because there's nothing left you can do. You can't prevent a crime once the crime has already happened, so that's when they engage. So I would change our police force to be more proactive in stopping crime and stopping the victimization of so many people in our community, and take police and put them in an active role rather than just taking notes on a crime that's already happened.
Okay, and but how, more specifically, how does that happen? Being that Mayor Broome, she's been a councilwoman, she's been a state rep, state senator, Representative Marcel's been on the council, now she's a state rep. You've been on the council as well, and it seems as though that every year we talk about Baton Rouge crime, but how effectively does that happen?
I would take one of my assistant chief administrative officer positions and put that person over public safety as a liaison to all of our first responders, but primarily with BRPD, so that that person, myself, and proper leadership from BRPD would go out to our communities. There's no bad communities. There's good communities that are being affected by crime at a higher rate than others. I would go start with those areas, have community meetings, and speak to the quiet voices of people that have to put up with the sound of gunfire on a daily basis, or worried about leaving their house at night, and they shouldn't have to feel that way.
Yes, sir.
Go speak directly to those folks. Tell them what they already know, the prevalence of crime that's happening in their neighborhood. Show them what best practices of a professional police force around the country have proven as ways to deter those crimes, and get buy-in from the community. And I'm telling you, when you go out and you work with folks in some of these areas that are hardest hit by crime, they want police presence. They want police to be nearby to deter crime and not embolden criminals with the lack of police presence.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Now, Mr. Gayrard, one of your policies is that you wanted to combine the city police and the the parish police. Is that somewhat of an assessment on the chief and the sheriff's current job, or do you feel as though there needs to be a complete overhaul of how we deal with
Well,
law enforcement here?
To an extent, and I think the leadership does need to be changed probably, but it's more likely it's just the root situation. And those two, they overlap hugely. It just needs to be combined into one entity, which I favor calling the Guardian Rouge. You know, we would have no more green, no more blue. It'd be as Matt likes to show, the hip maroon color of uniforms in the cars. It'd be a whole new, but it's a mindset that it's symbolic of. And to me, that is a chance for them to get into the community, like Matt was speaking, and even have small substations in all the neighborhoods, especially the worst neighborhoods, and to have them interact with the public in a significant way. I'd like to see community policing on steroids, to where people knew these officers by names, and they wouldn't be that adversarial situation that you see somewhat here, but especially around the country, to where the cops or the guardians, I should say, they're not cops, they're not policemen, they're guardians, and that's the mindset. So people would come to see them as what that is, a guardian, and not someone to be afraid of, and someone they can trust. You know, there's this no snitch mentality out there in a lot of neighborhoods, and we got to get rid of that. We have to get our police to back the people and to become their friends, essentially. And I think by starting a whole new organization from the ground up, I think that gives us all a chance to start it correctly, use all the best practices, get the best people in, and let's just crank it out and see what can happen with this Guardian Rouge.
Thank you, Mr. Gayrard. Mayor Broom, so continuing with the topic of crime, a few weeks ago you made an announcement that you were going to be using $2.5 million, I believe, of the CARES Act in order to try to combat crime. Do you think that is the better use of that resource, or do you think that should still go toward more the COVID-19 response?
Well, actually, it is part of the COVID-19 response. Okay. They have allowed this to be used for public safety because it has been nationally recognized that there is an uptick in crime, and COVID-19 is part of the reason of the uptick in crime. So I think that this is an excellent use of the dollars, especially since it has been encouraged from the funders to use CARES Act dollars for public safety. I think it will provide an excellent combination or collaboration with what we do on the policing front, with law enforcement, and then engaging our citizens, our nonprofits, our faith-based community to do their part as it relates to the neighborhood involvement. And so we will be putting out an RFP. It is coming before the council very soon. After that, an RFP will go out, and citizens who are involved, or nonprofits, faith-based, you name it, will be able to go through the RFP process. And we will stand up different violence interrupters, leadership development for community leaders to help organically lead in their community. And, you know, dealing with crime is a very complex issue. Law enforcement is part of it, but there are certainly social issues that are involved. And so you need a very comprehensive formula for addressing crime in a community.
Representative Marcel, $2.5 million of the CARES Act, would you have put it toward combating law enforcement, or do you think that would have been more used more toward the medical?
Well, let me start by saying that I sat on and I still continue to sit on the Appropriations Committee, which is where I was this morning. So we provided those dollars to the local government in order for the Broom to do whatever she's deemed best with it. However, I think that I have not looked at her entire plan on it. I think that there are some of those dollars that should be used for that, but I certainly think that I would certainly look to figure out how I could get money for a supplement to go up for the police officers and the firefighters would be what I would have looked to do. I'm not saying that some of it shouldn't be used for that, but I'm not sure of the dollar amount that I would have contributed to that. I'm certain that you know that there are a lot of issues as it relates to crime, and some of those are the systemic issues that they say as a result of poverty, and not actually putting the dollar amount in those neighborhoods where it should be, whether that's blight, whether that's education, tutoring, whatever that is. I think a lot of those issues, we could use that money for some of those things if it's going to be tied into the COVID money.
Mr. Gayrard, your response, same question.
You know, I don't have much of a problem with that decision. I think those monies were probably spent adequately given the problems that we're facing there. But my bigger problem is the whole COVID response generally. President Trump, when he came out of the hospital yesterday, he said, don't let the virus dominate you, don't let it keep you in fear. And I think as a whole, our city, our state, our country, the world has been dominated by the virus and has lived in fear, and it's not necessary because we don't have the right perspective. 99.7% of the people will not be killed by the virus, are the ones who contract it. 99.7. So it's a risk-benefit analysis to me. That's what we say in the law. I'm a lawyer. And so the risk of the disease it doesn't nearly match the response that we've given it. 600,000 people a year die of cancer. 600,000 people die of heart disease. That doesn't mean we're going to ban hamburgers and French fries. The government could make speed limits 35 miles an hour. No one would die on the roads in Louisiana. But there's a risk and there's a cost to that. So to me, though it is sad that anyone dies of a virus, it does happen. 50,000 people a year die of the flu. So to me, the whole lockdown mentality was wrong. It caused more harm, in my opinion, than good. Sweden never locked down. 9 states never locked down. I think we should be treating American citizens as the free American individuals, adults that we are, and I think the whole mentality should have been changed.
Yeah. Councilman Watson.
$2.5 million to put into social programs will certainly benefit those people who receive the benefits of those programs. That will probably change things over a long period of time. However, who's going to stop the murders that will probably happen this evening, watching what happens in our community? Who's going to stop the gunfire that's going to happen this evening or this week? We need to put more resources into police. We have certain situations where one district only had 2 police officers show up. We have a situation where the current administration didn't put hazard pay in the municipal operations plan, so we couldn't do overtime for our first responders. This is me talking to people at the congressional level, talking about how FEMA has money to supplement municipalities when they go into an emergency hazardous response, and this was not in our municipal operations plan. So when it gets put in, those monies are only available for the next emergency that happens. This $2.5 million could certainly go to benefit people in the long run by changing something that makes a systemic change in people's lives. We can't continue to go put Band-Aids on problems when we need to solve things in the long run. In North Baton Rouge, for example, we've got so many condemnations that could be torn down there that are the sites that crime happens. It hurts people's personal safety. It's bad for quality of place. I mean, those things need to be torn down. You know, the mayor had a recent photo opportunity where she stood out and looked at a hotel that I've been pushing to get torn down on Foster Drive. That finally did get torn down. If I could find more photo opportunities for her, maybe we'll get more condemnations torn down. But with $140,500 put in the budget on an annual rate of average of $6,000 Holloway cost for just a house, how are we going to get on top of the 1,000+ houses that need to be torn down, that are the places where crime happens and makes people feel like the government doesn't care about them and makes them feel like, what have I got to lose? I'm going to go out and commit a crime.
Right. So moving on to in regards to issues of blight, Mayor Broome, knowing that we do have a lot of blighted housing, a lot of businesses, of course, have closed due to COVID-19, in a post-COVID-19 world, how do you effectively lead the city and this parish to start bringing back businesses and revitalizing businesses here in Baton Rouge?
First of all, let me say that my administration dedicated over $2 million to address blight. It's so unfortunate that oftentimes when we have these forums and discussions that there's a lot of misinformation that goes out to the public. That is really disheartening for me because I think that the public deserves the truth in every area. So I always encourage people to go back. We have open checkbook in city parish government. One of the implementations of transparency in city parish government. So our citizens can see every dollar that is spent. Oftentimes, condemnations are aborted at the council level because they will give people extension after extension after extension. So we have dedicated money towards that. Now, in a post-COVID environment, we will continue to use innovative and creative approaches towards addressing disinvestment. We're in an area right now where disinvestment has occurred, but right next door is an area, Howell Place, empty for 15 years, this medical facility, where we spent quite a bit of time bringing together a public-private partnership. Now we will have over 100 jobs there. We'll have Ochsner Medical Center there. We will have a behavioral health clinic there, Oceans Health. And look, right across the street is a vacant building. It used to be a restaurant. And we all know when we start development that development attracts development. So I anticipate seeing something across the street real soon. But what we have to do is look at parcels of land that are available to encourage investors to come. We have to look at turnkey opportunities. We have to do what I've done is reach out to over 40 CEOs across the country as it relates to our new medical industries, pharmaceutical industries, and the tech industries, and invite them to areas and show what we have to offer.
Representative Marcel, how do you guide Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish in a post-COVID environment to bring those businesses back and make Baton Rouge attractive?
You talked a little bit about blighted buildings, and I heard Councilman Watson talking about tearing down buildings. Tearing down buildings is certainly an option under condemnation. However, I take a different approach to it. I believe that a lot of the buildings that we have left vacant in our neighborhoods should be utilized. And so you got to be an innovative thinker, right? One example is 1701 Main Street, where it was a blighted piece of property. It used to be a bank behind the old Gotchas, if you've been here any length of time. It's now the FEMA building. We worked to make sure that we got that property cleared to turn it over to the RDA so that we could have a purposeful use for it. And now it's going to be the Council on Aging new building. It's a beautiful facility. So we've got to figure out how to stop tearing down buildings and start utilizing those buildings to bring in other services that we need. Another example would be the fire department on 38th and Gashang. They started building new fire stations, which we really, really needed. But what we were left with, and what we're still left with throughout the city, is a lot of empty, blighted fire stations where crime does occur. I would have to agree with Matt. Crime was occurring. I was getting calls all the time about people being in that building and doing things that they should not have been doing. We've been able, and I started working on this when I was in the council. That show you how government is. A lot of pushback, a lot of hurdles. But I kept working on it even when I got to the House of Representatives. Now the Council on Aging is going to have an intergenerational center at that facility as well. So we've got to do more than one thing to bring businesses back. Yes, we've got to look at land that we have to incentivize people to move into those areas. But until you can get control of your crime, I don't know of any businesses rushing to get in the areas where the crime rate is outrageously high. And so we've got to look at that, and we've got to, first of all, look at the systemic causes, and that's poverty and education. And when we lift people up, such as the intergenerational program where we will have tutoring for youth, then we're able to do that. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in the next 4 years. All of a sudden, Baton Rouge is going to be this wonderful place. But I think it can happen one day at a time, one building at a time, and one business at a time.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. Mr. Gayrard.
Well, to me, you could approach and solve these cultural and economic problems in one fell swoop. If you go to fuserouge.org, I have bold, innovative plans in all these areas, but especially this one, education. That's the key. And my plan is called Fund It, Don't Run It. I want to get the government out of the business of funding education, of running education, and just fund education. divide all the money up, each child would get a credit stipend worth about $8,000. Spend it on the school of their choice. The government no longer tells you where to go to school. That would create, in my opinion, a whirlwind, an educational entrepreneurial windstorm that would descend upon East Baton Rouge Parish and develop areas we can't even imagine would be developed, especially the North Baton Rouge blighted areas. All of a sudden you'd have these new companies come in that we can't even imagine who would want to come in and take part of this new educational wonderstorm. And they would be building buildings, they'd be renovating buildings. The culture would change because now, especially the poorer kids, the underprivileged kids, would have an opportunity for a world-class education. We could change Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish from maybe one of the worst educational situations in America to maybe one of the best. Because right now, you are not getting a good education in public school unless it's maybe a charter school or maybe some of the magnet situations. But by and large, you are not getting educated. You're getting half educated. So to me, if we put this in place, not only do you solve education, do you solve the culture, but you have an economic firestorm come in that changes the parish forever.
Thank you. Now, Councilman Watson, now as Mayor Broom has stated earlier, yes, we want to make sure that we have as much accurate information as possible put out about these things. Now, you've been also very critical of Mayor Broom and about an issue that involved Baton Rouge losing out on $605,000. Now, of course, we've heard stories about the classic whodunit. Who was responsible? Who dropped the ball, Councilman Watson, in regards to that situation?
I've been working on this program for about 3 years now. The CDC gave 2 different grants, one for $500,000, one for $105,770 from CDC through the state Louisiana Department of Health to go to our mosquito abatement and rodent control here to shred tires because tires hold water, warm water up, won't let the water evaporate, and it quickens the incubation period of mosquitoes that carry West Nile, dengue fever, encephalitis, etc. So this is a big, big deal, not just in a health problem with our community, but also because those tires have to be shredded because this was for a tire shredder. Those tires would be moved out from the ditches and the vacant properties where there's so many of them are dumped. And you can look at 311, you can go to open data and you can look up all the complaints about people complaining about those tires being dumped.
Yes, sir, Councilman Watson, but the thing is you have been publicly critical saying that it was the mayor's office and the mayor's administration who dropped the ball that allowed us not to secure that grant.
Sure.
So at what process, I guess the citizens would like to know who was responsible for it and exactly where did the ball get dropped?
When we got we got an extension from the state government asked for the CDC because of COVID. We got an extension for the deadline. When the original deadline was much earlier in the spring, it got moved to September 1st. I just spoke with Mindy Richard, who's second in command of Louisiana Department of Health, just yesterday. She was very sorry. She apologized quite a bit because she was just so sorry that we lost this. Chris Goranson, who is the head of purchasing, did not submit the information that he needed to Kyle Moppert from what I'm hearing from the state level. And I'm asking the state because they're handling the grant through CDC to the municipality. He did not get the information that he needed in time to sufficiently get the grant, so we lost that dollar amount. I believe that Louisiana Department of Health is still going to try to be able to use that dollar amount, but again, rather than on something that's a systematic change, it's going to be a cleanup here or spraying. That's going to be a 1 or 2 time sort of deal, not a change forever in the way that people handle tires. So there's absolutely nothing more that I believe that I could have done to help champion this process going forward. Okay. I was on the committee to look over the submissions from the companies that were going to provide the shredder.
Got it.
Never had an opportunity to meet. It was not reached out to by the head of purchasing. I'm sitting here watching this all dissolve after 3 years of work on it.
Okay, well, thank you, Councilman Watson. We may come back to that, but okay. So, Mayor Broom, in regards to the $605,000 grant, did you drop the ball, or was it the head of purchasing, or was it Councilman Watson, or was it one of those things you picked up the paper and said, "I didn't even know I had a dog in this fight"?
Yeah. So let me just say this: I'm not going to point the finger at anybody.
Right.
What I am going to say is that when this whole discussion first started, it was certainly birthed in the council. I brought Councilman Watson and I think some other council members in my office to talk about it. You remember that conversation we had?
Ma'am, I had a 2-week prior
No,
engagement.
we had several conversations. But at any rate, we had some conversations around it. And then in addition to that, when it was being promulgated, that it might be put in an area of concern in terms of environmental concerns, like this area right here. I offered to step in and help look for locations. Let's just fast forward. The good news for all of us, for all of the citizens, I stepped up and reached out to the Louisiana Department of Health. And it's my understanding as we sit here today that the grant is still intact, that it is going to be facilitated by mosquito rodent abatement, which is under the auspices of the Metro Council. So at this point, all is well and we can move forward.
If I could respond to that.
Sure. Yes, you have
As
a
I
rebuttal.
spoke with Mindy Richard from LDH, what the mayor just said would absolutely be news to LDH that that's even the case. So I think it's disingenuous to make that comment when I just spoke to someone who was handling that whole program on behalf of LDH, who I just spoke with face-to-face yesterday and obviously knows nothing about the claim you just made, that the tire shredder is still going to move forward. We've lost our private partner that was going to be involved in it, even though, you know, we had the mayor did step in and find another location next to the North Maintenance Lot, right next to Abundance Place subdivision. They held a public meeting saying, why didn't anyone come to talk to us? And they were very upset that the shredder was going to be placed next to their households. And I said, I'll do everything I can to find another location. And our private partner was going to buy 10 acres of property, and still is, for her private business, up by the landfill, so that we move the tire shredder, even though it's not as practical because it's away from ground zero of our terrible tire dumping problem, but away from the concerns of the mayor and other folks on the council.
Okay.
Well, if I
Ma'am.
may respond.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know this was going to be a rebuttal, but if I may respond, let me just say the last conversation that I had with the LDH, which was not yesterday, was that the money was going to be going to mosquito rodent abatement. And so you all are over mosquito rodent abatement, correct? Well, you'll have an opportunity to continue to facilitate that while you're on the council. But that was my conversation, which was not yesterday, but maybe a week or so ago when I spoke with LDH. So as I said earlier, as far as I'm concerned, all is well. It's a closed case on that.
Okay. So, speaking of that, you're probably one of the most energetic candidates that we have, Mr. Gayrard. Now, recently, you know, it was announced that the Bayou Classic will be in Shreveport, Louisiana. Now, of course, being in the hospitality industry, a lot of people are wondering, what can we do to make Baton Rouge so attractive to where we can start being able to host and house events and sporting events and concerts to whereas Baton Rouge will actually be a destination instead of a place of last resort?
Yeah, I appreciate you commenting on the energy because I do see myself as being a very fit. I want to be the fitness mayor. They've heard this before. I want to change the dynamic in the parish because we're 60% obese, so we have to change that. And hopefully, as mayor, I can be that figurative leader. Yeah, I think just overall economic development. We're the state capital. We're in the middle of the state. I mean, we're just a natural, geographic, and logical place to house and hold these kind of events. I think the whole economic development with my Fund It, Don't Run It, the educational program, would jumpstart everything and create this new mindset of young entrepreneurs wanting to come here. So all of a sudden you see all kind of spin-off businesses being started and coming up. And also business development, you do it, you change it to where we're the Hong Kong of business development, from low-end businesses up to high-tech, you know, just make it where they can start up in a day and just start attracting those kind of businesses. And once you do that, the entertainment tentacles go out. And that's when those kind of people and those kind of events want to come to Baton Rouge because we have facilities, we have the people to do it, we have the infrastructure to do it, so let's get it done.
And speaking in terms of infrastructure, of course our roads...
Can I chime in on that?
Sure, absolutely.
You know, I was on the Metro Council, so I did a lot of work with, I served also on the Hospitality Committee with Visit BR, right? And so I looked at that, and one of the problems that we had in attracting concerts here and those type of venues when they choose other places like Lake Charles over us, or even Lafayette, and certainly New Orleans for those venues or for those concerts, is because of the structure that we have with the River Center. So they had more incentives to do those concerts and those at those other venues, right? I think that needs to be revisited, and I started some work on it right before I left. And I think that those are the issues. If you talk to a promoter and they say that you can come in here and do this event for $100,000 in BR, and you can do it for $70,000 in Lake Charles, where do you think they're going to do it? And so those are some of the issues that I think we face in Baton Rouge about attracting those types of concerts there.
Mayor Broom, what can we do to make Baton Rouge attractive, to be an attractive destination and not a place of last resort?
Well, certainly we have been looking at the River Center in terms of being competitive with other locations. And obviously, it is privately owned. There is a need for renovations or perhaps even a new facility, and we've had a lot of discussions about how to make that happen. As you notice, right next door to the River Center, there's going to be a new theater, renovated theater that has existed. And so we have to make ourselves competitive. We've had conversations about what needs to be done at the River Center to be more competitive, and part of it has to be with a renovated or new facility. But as we look at other entities that are around, like right down the street, there will be a new casino that is being renovated, land-based, et cetera, that will now have expanded space and opportunities. So we have to continue down that path of opening up facilities that certainly make it compatible and inviting for concerts. And we just have to make ourselves competitive to other areas in terms of what we have to offer from a financial point of view when interacting with those in the entertainment industry.
Now, along with attracting events here, of course, many citizens will wonder, well, how would I be able to get to it in a timely fashion? That's right, we're getting ready to talk about traffic. Now, you've implemented one of the largest traffic improvement plans, I believe $1 billion with Move BR. Where would you currently assess that? Do you think do we see some gains as to where it's now traffic mitigation is a little bit more controllable, or do you still get those phone calls of, hey, Mayor, I've been sitting at this light for 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, well, whenever you're doing something that's transformative, it doesn't happen overnight. But I want to thank the citizens of East Baton Rouge Parish who supported this initiative that will indeed transform our traffic woes as well as our infrastructure. So let's just say we're here in 2020. At the end of 2020, one of the main issues that will help in our traffic challenges will be the light synchronization. Over 100 lights are now on schedule to be synchronized by the end of this year. That's 100 of the 200 that are part of the program. We have at least 7 programs, I think, projects that are now roads that are being worked on, whether it's roads, sidewalks, et cetera, by the end of this year. And so not only will we see our traffic woes change as a result of the work that is being done, but we'll also see an improved infrastructure. Now, let me say this. I was in the legislature for a number of years, and there were a lot of talk, there was a lot of talk about a loop. Right now, I'm in conversations with parish presidents about a new bridge. And so because we have gone so long without addressing a loop, without addressing a new bridge, then now we see an elevated challenge around traffic. So while we're doing our part with Move BR, I will say we also need to stand up other opportunities to mitigate traffic, whether it's a new bridge, whether it's a loop, and certainly as we communicate with our state and federal partners, hopefully that will be a reality.
Traffic woes. If Marcel is elected mayor president, or am I going to be able to make it to my doctor's appointment on time, or am I going to have to call to reschedule?
You know, I would have to agree with the mayor that it's going to take a while to get this straight because we have been behind time so long on traffic and infrastructure, right? I served on the transportation committee, so I voted to move the exit on Washington Street when I was there, to also widen I-10. I think it's going to take not just the city of Baton Rouge, but the state working with the federal government to fix our bridge issue, to make sure that there is some type of way to go around Baton Rouge. And you know, I always say, and I said it when I was on the council, I like the bump idea. I believe that we can go ahead and put some type of a toll in where the people who are moving through Baton Rouge can pay for it and not the citizens. Because I think we're out taxed. I think we're taxed more than anywhere else. And so we've got to find a way to do a public-private partnership and then put that toll roll up so that we can get around it and make sure we're saving lives, because at the end of the day, whenever the bridge backs up, it backs up the entire city, and somebody's going to die trying to get to the hospital, or not just to a doctor's appointment, but to the hospital. And so I see that as a way that we can fix it by working with the state, continue to work with the state, and we have a wonderful director over there, Mr. Sean, and he's doing an excellent job of doing what he can to widen the interstate and to add additional roads where he can. So I'm all for that. I'll work with them, continue to work with the congressional delegation as well.
Thank you. Mr. Gayrard.
Okay, yeah, traffic. Go to fusetherouge.org for an elaborated discussion, but I would say real quick, bridge, make a decision within 1 year. Just make a decision, get it built somewhere. Limited access highways. Before you can do a loop, limited access LA1 to the Donaldsonville Bridge. LA 415, get it over to 190 and go over the old bridge with the bump situation with the toll road, and develop Airline Highway, North Baton Rouge at the same time. Come off the bridge when you get over it to Nicholson. And I know in the Move BR, which is going to be good over the next 30 years, it's destined for 4-laning. So you bring that all the way out into Gonzales Ascension and tie it into I-10 out there. That gets volume off the bridge. The other thing that you have to do is what I call the 1,000 points of fright. My apologies to First President Bush. But there are a lot of things that are being fixed with that Move BR program. But there are other things, like when I get off at Essen every day, off of I-10 going east, it stacks up. There's one lane getting into the medical corridor. We need to use imagination and common sense and develop some more offshoots, better lane usage, better light usage to help get around these lock points that are all around the city that citizens can help us with. I might even encourage old Fred Rayford to maybe retire. I mean, he would be, 117 years old at this point? But we need to let him go get his gold watch and go to the forum. Get somebody in from out of the city into here and have a new look at it. And two more things. One other place that we can change, like another lock point, is getting off of I-12, I-10 at Corporate and College. They have the flyover coming in, but you should have just did an exit lane right to Corporate right there. We could have used eminent domain and gone right through Gordon McKernan's office and taken that down. Sorry, I don't want to take away your office.
What?
Or somewhere, just a road right through there.
Yeah.
So
I think we got a rebuttal on that.
Well, I know.
I'm
not going to take her office. And finally, I would, and this is against my interest because we have way too many wrecks in this town. And look, that's against my interest because every wreck I stand to profit financially from that. So does Denise, actually. But 50 wrecks a day last time I checked. We need to make licensing better. We give licenses out like candy right now. The parish could have a higher standard than the state. Let's make the parish residents get more training, because these are 4,000-pound death machines that in all of the rest of society, you can't do any other vehicle and not have more intense licensing than what you have for a car. So let's change that, and you can help, and that does slow down traffic, all those wrecks every day. So change the traffic patterns, change the road structure, and get better licenses.
Thank you. Councilman Watson, traffic.
Yeah, we did. I mean, it was wonderful when Jim Bernhardt and Mike Wampold got involved and talked to the Republican members of council and said, look, let's make this a sales tax rather than a 5 mil property tax, because the property owners in our community feel like they're the ATM every time someone gets an idea that needs more money. So that's what facilitated that to get going. I think it's going to be a great program if it's managed properly, efficiently, and we start pushing smaller projects with the highest amount of effect on traffic movement first, so that people get used to the idea of construction happening and making things better for them immediately. Now, as Mr. Gayrard mentioned about an exit to corporate, the flyover is not going to be built because the folks didn't want to have the flyover come, and it was literally going to be over people's backyards, so they're not going to build that flyover at what was originally designed. But the space you were talking about is called Trust Drive.
Yep.
That's right between Sullivan's and the Marriott down there. That would take some of the traffic from going to the College Road exit off of I-10 and allow you to go onto corporate. It'd be the only place on I-10 where you'd have a sign that says Jefferson Highway this way and allow people to leave. There's a large portion of mode property there that would probably turn into a viable sales tax, injecting business if you brought a lot of that traffic through there. That Esplanade Mall area is falling on hard times, even though they've just got their concrete redone in the parking lot and all this. Those businesses don't seem to be really thriving. Sullivan's is doing well. Clicks is not doing well right now because of the COVID restrictions, but little turn lanes. For example, I thought you were going to go after Essen Lane, getting off of Essen going onto Jefferson Highway.
That's a bad one too.
If we're riding in a car going over 12 on Essen and we come to Jefferson Highway and we want to make a right-hand turn, right there where they cut all the bamboo back, just something as simple as extending that right-hand turn lane would move a whole lot more people through that. You could implement turn lanes and small projects like that throughout the parish to get cars moving again without a high cost.
Thank you, Councilman Watson.
Now, I have a rebuttal.
Okay, you have a rebuttal.
Just very quickly,
Yes.
thank you guys for sending more traffic by Attorney Gordon McKernan's office.
Now, Mayor Broom, since Mr. Gaillard has already told us that if he's elected somebody who's not going to be in his administration, be Mr. Fred Rayford, but someone that, of course, that you appointed that really made some changes. How do you assess Chief Murphy Paul's job as Chief of Police, and in regards to how he's been able to try to combat crime and try to be innovative with the police department?
I believe that Chief Murphy Paul is a stellar police chief. When I came into office, it was incumbent upon me to move forward with the 21st century model of policing. And like any time when you are trying to implement change, you have to fight often against the addiction to mediocrity or the institutional, this is how we've always done it. So Chief Paul went in and started implementing changes, but not only that, he and his community policing team had hundreds of meetings with citizens throughout the community. In fact, right prior to COVID-19, we were visiting all the precincts. But I certainly can't take away all the work that BRPD did, Chief Murphy Paul and his team, in terms of closing the gap between officers and the community. Is there still room to go, to grow? Absolutely. But I certainly think he is the leader for such a time as this.
Yes. So as we know, one of the mayor's reforms, of course, all the officers now have body cameras. Do you think this program has been effective since Mayor Broom has implemented it? And of course, how would you also assess Chief Paul's job as, tenure as Chief of Police?
Let me start out by saying I think that Chief Paul is doing the best job that he can do. I think that there's some issues with him not having enough policemen. There's certainly a rise on the people who are retiring from the police department, and I think those gaps need to be filled. So he has some large shoes to fill. Certainly the body camera was something that I passed in 2015, and I was very proud of that work, and certainly I think that it has helped. It was before all of the stuff started to happen all over the place. It was a vision that I had to show transparency between the police and the community. And initially, there was a lot of pushback on that issue from the police department.
But with the body cameras issue, I mean, to cut you off, but so you said that you advocated that in 2015?
Absolutely. I think August or October of 2015 is when I proposed it. In fact, it was passed prior to the mayor ever coming into office, and I was waiting on Kip Holden to put it in the budget, but he did not put it in the budget, but the council voted on it. I think you were an aide at the time, you remember that, and we all voted on it, and because we had a committee. There was a pilot program that started, and I think they went on for maybe a year, 2017.
Oh.
And so it was already in operation. What we were trying to do then was get the funding. So we met Tyra Wicker, myself, the late Buddy Amoroso, the DA's office, the public defender's office. There was a body camera committee that I chaired. And so we met and found the best practices. We brought in people from New Orleans, from other cities that had it, found out what we needed to do to put that into place here in Baton Rouge and not reinvent the wheel. And so we also looked at funding. And so we found funding for the body cameras, and it was a federal grant. And somehow, when I left the council, Mayor Broom came in and she went on to purchase the cameras and thought it was reimbursable, and it wasn't reimbursable. But I think they worked it out and they fixed it afterwards. But initially, she put the money out for the cameras to make sure that the policy that I passed, that they had the rest of the body cameras. They had body cameras before for a pilot program for a whole year, I think it was. And so it turned into something good for the police. In fact, last week, I was at the Churchill Cigar Bar, and one of the officers pulled me to the side and told me, Ms. Marcel, I want to tell you something. I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time. And I was thinking, what do you want to tell me? And he says, when you first proposed that measure, I was against it. He said, until I came in contact with a citizen who reached for a gun in the middle of a traffic stop and said what he was getting ready to do me. And he said, and I pulled my gun and put it to his head. Then he citizen filed a complaint on him for pulling the gun, putting it to his head. But when they went back and looked at that body camera, they saw that he was the aggressor and he was the one reaching for the gun. So it protected him, and he thanked me. This was last week. So I was very proud of that legislation.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. Mr. Gayrard, how would you assess Chief Murphy Paul's job as police chief?
First, I didn't know you smoked cigars. But
I don't. I went to pick up a check.
okay, well, there you go.
They were there, and the check was there.
Yeah.
I don't even drink.
First of all, on cameras, I would not only do all the body cams, I'd camera up the whole city. I mean, a lot more, like London and New York, just for added security. But Chief Paul, he would be welcome to apply, because this would be Guardian Rouge. I'm not sure how he would look in red or hip maroon, but
That was your color.
that is, but he would be welcome to. It'd be a whole new entity, of course. So it would take different talents, and so he would be welcome to apply. And because I want to see this as an entirely new force, 21st century, cop on the beat, well trained, better paid, and even martial art skilled, to where maybe some of the deadly force encounters could be quelled a lot earlier than them having to resort to even tasers before guns. So everybody's welcome to apply. It's going to be a whole new mindset, the Guardian Rouge.
Yes, sir.
In 2016, we had the lowest homicide rate in a decade in this community. After this mayor was elected and she selected her hand-picked chief of police, we have seen, you have to check this, but I think the highest number locally of gun-related deaths since maybe the Civil War. We have got a huge problem with crime in our community, and Murphy Paul is the chief of police. Everything's going to rest on him. If we can blame the flood in 2016, we can blame COVID now, but we had bad crime in the 2 years between both of those when he was the chief of police there. I had a difficulty getting we talk about transparency. I asked him for numbers on non-fatal shootings. He told me he didn't have the numbers. I filed a public records request, and the following Monday he went to the press club and gave out the very numbers he told me he didn't have. I have a big problem with the disingenuous relationship Murphy Paul has with transparency and the truth at times. I think the morale problem that we have amongst our police officers, with so many police officers retiring early, even with loss in their pension, to get out of this BRPD, not because they're being hammered for being bad police officers. They just don't like the culture and how bad morale is in this department right now. We could do so much better with the people that we've got. We certainly have to add more police officers. We certainly have to pay them more, so we've got more people to choose from that come into the force.
Thank you, Councilman Watson. Well, thank you all. We're getting ready to go to closing statements. I hope I haven't put everybody on the hot seat too much, but Mayor, you did open it, but we're going to start on this end for the closing statements. You'll give the last closer. So I guess along with your closing statement, we're going to give you all a minute instead of 30 seconds, because I'm going to ask you a question on top of this. Okay. With so much division that we see going on, even right now with St. George, along with your closing statements, please tell us why you are the best to unify and unite this city starting in 2021. Okay. And we'll start with you, and of course include your closing statement as well.
I'll wrap this into my closing statement.
Okay, yes, sir.
My working out in the community, not just in District 11, but across the community, I've noticed that we can talk about division. We certainly see division in other cities ramped up to terrible extent. But if you go out and you talk to your neighbors, whether they're next door or they're a neighbor across town, there's a lot of commonality and there's a lot that unites us. What I'm noticing is people united in dissatisfaction with the crime rate, dissatisfaction with governmental services, people understanding that we need to have the condemnations torn down, and as Councilwoman Marcel said, I'm not looking to tear down usable buildings. I'm looking to tear down dangerous, vacated buildings that are harming those people that live on either side, or certainly harming the chance of economic opportunity. I see North Baton Rouge as the sleeping giant of economic activity in our parish. That's where we need to start spending money equitably, and it doesn't mean because I built a road in this area, I need to build a road there. I need to spend money equitably on the things that each part of our community needs, and I know how to do that. I've worked with so many different people. I've worked with bond attorneys to try to come up with ways to supplement the amount of money that we take in taxes, so we don't have to ask for more in taxes, to come up with the money to tear down some of these very dangerous large commercial structures that are well beyond the amount of money that's put in the budget to tear down. Maybe years worth of the budget for tearing down condemnations would be taken for one particular commercial condemnation tear down that's holding back an entire community 4 or 5 blocks because something that's on a street corner needs to be removed. I'm going to be the guy that's out there working to organize government to work efficiently so we can reset our drainage back to zero. I know we've got the 5 tributaries plan and we've got a drainage plan, but a plan is in one hand and you dig in the other. Which one are you going to get something done in? I've walked out to Clay Cup Bayou that I've been asking since when Crystal Ball was in the Gulf, and now we're in the Greek alphabet right now. Yeah. Clay Cup Bayou still hasn't been cut out, and those people have to pay flood insurance. We need to go out and set everything back to square one as far as maintenance, and then put in regular maintenance programs to keep things working well, and not just put Band-Aid approaches on it, but instead fix things permanently. And that's what you can expect from me, leading from the front, on the front lines, going anywhere and talking to anyone about the problems they've got.
Thank you, Councilman Watson. Mr. Gayrod.
Human beings are built to dreams as uniquely as can be. From God we rise, individualized, fate awaits to date with thee. Great deeds are seeds within us all, set free your destiny. But we need D-I-S-C-I-P-L-I-N-E, discipline. Baton Rouge needs discipline to make the hard choices. Baton Rouge needs boldness to make the great choices. I am the only person, I think, in this race that has the insight and the imagination and has come up with a bold plan that is called Fuse the Rouge. That's to bring the parish together. And if you go to my website, fusetherouge.org, which they've heard a lot here, you will see that in education, crime, traffic, business development, and what I call community relations and quality of life. For instance, I want to build a Central Park where a city park golf course is. I want to bring the parish together in all sorts of ways. And I think I'm the only one that's an independent candidate and who has the outsider mentality. I want to clean out the swamp that we have here, just like there's one in Washington. And I want to start afresh, I want to start anew, and I want to do it with bold new leadership. So vote, please vote. Eric Gayrard, Fuse the Rouge.
Representative Marcel.
Thank you for inviting me. And I do want to say that I believe that I would be a great leader for the city of Baton Rouge because I've shown my leadership. I've shown my leadership skills on the Metro Council. Even before I was on the Metro Council, I did community events in my community to try to lift them up. I've shown my leadership skills as a state representative in the House of Representatives now. I believe that I lead by example. I stand in the front, and I have a bold leadership. I think that's what Baton Rouge needs, a bold leadership. Sometimes, you know, we need to do things innovative, and we've got to have a vision to lead. I think the Bible says where there's no vision, the people perish. And so you cannot wait for someone else to have a vision for you to stand behind their vision, but you have to, a leader, a great leader, should have their own vision. And that vision should include everyone in this parish. It should include things like ways to prevent flooding, ways to combat crime, and ways to lift up our community out of poverty. I believe that I've shown those leadership skills. I think I'm your candidate to lead Baton Rouge forward into the 21st century. And I'd ask you to vote for me. C. Denise Marcel, number 90 on your ballot.
Mayoral.
Thank you once again for the opportunity to engage. 4 years ago, I ran for this seat, not because I was hungry for power or authority, but because I responded once again to the call to leadership. Because I responded to the call to public service many years ago. And I'm thankful that I've had that opportunity for the past 4 years to serve the citizens of this community. I've been there, boots on the ground with them at activities in their neighborhoods, in their churches. I have been with the people, but more importantly, in a time and in a season when we had some of the most challenging situations, a community in trauma after 2016. I stood up and stepped in. And what I did was not only address the issues of police reform, drainage, transportation, equity, and inclusion. I kept our city moving after crisis after crisis. As we speak right now, we're dealing with an event in the Gulf. I've directed and led us through crisis after crisis, transformational leadership in trying times. We've sowed some enormous seeds. We've made tremendous progress in every area that I just spoke of. I want to see the next generation and beyond have the fruit of what we've sown already. And so I'm asking the citizens of Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish to stand with me on what we have achieved so far and the vision that I have of peace, prosperity, and progress, and let's move 4 years forward.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Good. Well, I can't wish you all luck because, of course, somebody's going to get the luck of the draw. But I do wish you all well and good luck on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Another exclusive.